years on all the years. Matt, did you still have a question?
Yeah, basically about if you want to put yourself up for president. So could anyone put themselves up for being president?
Yeah,
Julie, you said it would be artists,
I mean, it would be rules. I mean, I think there have to be citizens in the UK. I think there have to be resident here. Clearly, there'd be an upper and lower age limit. I guess we wouldn't want convicts. There would be rules. I mean,
but surely there'd never be true democracy because the binman called Dave down the road isn't going to get voted in to be president. You have to be very well known. You have to be a celebrity or of high standing in the community. It would never be fair.
Well, I think it would be someone that garnered respect for their life achievement rather than someone who's just born into a family. Now, I think that would be quite an exciting race. I mean, Ireland can come up with, is it 6 or 8 very, very good candidates at the last election. All from different walks of life. As a poet and an author and all very interesting characters, and all of them. Imagine how much better we can be as a much bigger nation. I mean, we can come up with some very, very good candidates. Could an ordinary people rise to it? Yes, that's the point we're making. Of course, an ordinary people rise to it, but I think they'd have to be known, wouldn't they? You'd have to achieve something in your life. I think that's my personal opinion.
Well, I mean, two quick things. One, there were some very interesting characters in the Irish presidential election, but the one who won was the one that had €840,000 donated to him by the Irish Labour Party. So, independent, I think not. It's a lovely idea. It really is a lovely idea that Dave the Binman can rise to. But why he'd want to be head of state, so where he can't, where he's just a ceremonial thing as opposed to head of the government, where he can actually change things, I don't know. But clearly, you look at any republic, you look at America, you look at France, you look at Italy, and tell me the last time a well-moneyed, well-connected person didn't win. In fact, monarchy is the only, perhaps strangely, is the only political system where wealth can't buy you the position of head of state.
Should we move up then, Max, to the question?
I think there's a few little logical flaws in your argument as a monarchist here. One of which is your emphasis on politicians being sort of evil and greedy and whatever else, and horrible power-grabbing people. But you say that political parties don't put this stuff on their manifesto. Well, if they're so power-grabbing, greedy, stupid and whatever else, how can we judge what they put on a manifesto as a realistic thing that we should aspire to? If they're so bad, why should we think that what they put on a manifesto is worth reading? That's possibly explaining some of the apathy that Ray mentions. And on top of that, in terms of living cheap, I'm going home and having baked beans on toast after is the Queen.
Well, yeah, well, no, but I mean, I don't know. I think the Queen. I quite well connected.
Baked beans on toast. I reckon she's having a nice steak tonight.
I'll be having no doubt having a KFC at Birmingham services on the way home. There's meat in that. But okay, so that's two. Again, okay, I'm not going to stand here before this great society and say the Queen is. Look you all in the eye and say the Queen is going to have baked beans and tea. She isn't. But come on, guys. I mean, I seriously doubt President Obama is sitting down to half a tin of baked beans. I mean, these are all arguments that would still be issues, and we'd just be going off that bloody president as opposed to off that bloody Queen. I mean, it just okay, so that's good. That brings me on to the second point. You can get rid of it. Politicians, I agree, and I'm glad you brought it up. I do think that politicians. I mean, I'm being giving them a rough ride, as I always do. You know, there are some deeply admirable politicians on all sides of the political spectrum. But
can you name one?
The reason they don't put abolishing the monarchy on their manifesto is because it wouldn't win votes. People wouldn't vote for it. And evidently not. Although, I mean, okay, I would suggest, and I hope I don't get myself into trouble here, that of the main, whether we can call them that, parties that would be most likely to abolish the monarchy, I would say was probably the Liberal Democrats. I imagine that they would be, but they don't. And they don't. The reason they don't put it on there is because it wouldn't be a popular policy. Evidently.
I mean, there's a Liberal Democrat MP whose name escaped me, who actually publicly came out and said he was Republican. He didn't suffer any loss of performance in the election as a result of that. I just don't believe that at all. I really don't.
Why have none of them got the written manifesto?
Well, you mentioned manifestos earlier, and you make this strange assertion that only 0.3% of the people voted for a party with a Republican in their manifesto. Well, that's akin to saying that most of the people in this country voted for pro-fox hunting.
It wasn't in
It's
their
not in
manifesto.
their manifesto. It would be a free vote, as would fox hunting be. We're not expecting the Labour Party or the Conservative Party to tell their MPs how to vote on a republic.
No,
It's a free vote.
but you
So
admit,
you're not going to have it in the manifesto.
But you admit that for a republic to come about, the most likely way is that a political party would get a republic, a referendum, I assume, would then go ahead. I mean, referendums don't just fall out of the sky. I mean, the reason the independence referendum is happening in Scotland is not just because one day they went, oh, I know, let's have a referendum. It's because the SNP won an election to Parliament, and that was in their manifesto. So surely, how a republic would happen in
I
this
think
country.
you'll find Charles will do a very good job. I didn't think we'll need a political party. I really don't. All I can say.
Arthur, I think, is the next question.
Going back to the point of what the alternative would be, you keep mentioning the non-politician groups. Do you not feel this might lead to sort of crass, dumbed-down race of popularity of who would actually get elected?
Isn't that what we've got now?
Before, by the way, and I don't think so. I think people take it very seriously. I think they take it more serious than the general election. I really do.
Who would have no power, like the politicians actually have power.
Well, I mean, Scott mentioned there earlier about this why he wouldn't think that people want to become, why people want to become head of state and not prime minister. It's a strange, we've gone backwards in this country, to be honest with you, in terms of social mobility. If you go back to the 70s and who became our leaders of our parties, one thing they did have in common, whether you agree with them or not, Wilson, Keith, even Thatcher, actually, and Major, they all came from fairly ordinary backgrounds. You cannot say the same about our modern day politics. It's actually becoming much more like an American model. So we see the opportunity of head of state from an elected head of state as a counter to that. And there's no reason why people like we don't generally name names. People, J.K. Rowling, Professor Brian Cox, Chris Hoy, Steve Redwood. Why can't these people become presidents and represent the views of the people? Rather than being a silent monarch, which is what we've got at the moment, who never says anything.
Well, just very quickly, I mean, we're going around the surface a bit here, but I mean, J.K. Rowling donated £1 million to the Labour Party. That will instantly make some people very cross. And I just, the politicisation of this office is not necessary so long as it maintains the consent of the British people, which it does.
Can we get another question?
Okay, question to both of you again. Do you believe that the voting system and the party politics we have in this country as a parliamentary democracy, do you reckon that restricts us for our choice as opposed to, say, other types of democracies when it comes to monarchy and republics?
Well, yeah, so for anyone who's done a few lessons of A-level politics will know that first past the post favours big parties. I think it's the first thing you do in A-level politics. Favours big parties and harms those parties, but it is not unheard of in systems of first past the post for a party to sweep.
That was my point, the fact that first past the post is so restricting in small parties. How can the small parties which do support a republic get in when our system is so...
Well, yeah, I mean,
that was my initial
no
point.
apologist for first past the post.
I think the first thing to do, there's two things that need to happen. We need to remove the freedom of information exemption from the law, and we need to remove the oath of allegiance for MPs in the House of Parliament. That's the first two things. They're quite simple to do, and we can have an open discussion about it. At the moment, it can't even be discussed. I mean, this idea that it has the consent of the people. Principally, if we didn't want it, we wouldn't have it. I think Charles has said the same. I think we might be talking to each other. Why don't they put it to the vote? Charles has actually gone on record to say, look, if there was a referendum, I'd stand as president. Well, let him. This guy's been told all his life how life.
Has he said that?
He has been told since birth how wonderful he is. It's hardly surprising he thinks he has the answers to the world's problems. And most of the challenges that Scott goes on about are his own creation. Homeopathy, farming.
The Prince's Trust.
How much work does he actually do?
Well, I don't have his day-to-day calendar in front of me, but he clearly
let
puts
me
in
draw
a
an
great
analogy
deal.
with the Duke of Edinburgh Award.
Yes.
And we can go back to Fiona Bruce's famous, wonderful interview. I can't use the word interview, it had very little journalistic merit. But on occasion of his 90th birthday, she asked him, and of course, Your Royal Highness, all the wonderful work you do for the Duke of Edinburgh Award. And he took fair credit to it. He said, no, I just got my name for that, I don't really do that.
Well, these days,
Hold on. She wouldn't let go. She said, no, you're being too modest, Your Royal Highness. And she forced it down on him, and he eventually said, yeah, okay, well, fine. Now, sometimes it's not the royals actually promoting themselves, it's us doing it for them. That's the reality.
Well, I mean, you have ignored the tense from that interview where he's 90 years old. I don't expect any 90-year-old to be hiking up Snowdon or something these days. I mean, there's no doubt that in his younger days he did help out. So